The best-selling chip in America started out as trash, literally. Tortillas that a cook at a small restaurant was supposed to throw away at the end of the shift because they had gone stale and nobody wanted them. No grand concept, no laboratory full of people in white coats, just food that was supposed to end up in the trash. And this is not some story made up for a video, but the plain truth. The Doritos recipe was invented not by a food technologist with a degree in food engineering and not by a Frito-Lay laboratory. It was invented by a random sales representative who simply did not want to watch food being thrown away. And the man whose name now stands behind a billion-dollar brand first learned about these chips while on a family vacation at a roadside eatery with no sign, simply passing by chance.
Inside the company itself, this product was considered a stupid idea for several years. He was told no again and again, and it would receive approval only when he practically stopped asking for permission and started acting over the heads of his own bosses. What made a major corporation reject for years a product that today brings in billions of dollars annually? How did one man, whom everyone around him kept telling no, push the idea all the way to a national launch, risking his own career? And why did he ask to be buried with these chips, literally, handful by handful, right into his grave? We will go through all of it in order, starting with that very trash can in the kitchen of a restaurant at Disneyland.
1955. Disneyland has just opened. In addition to the rides and the castle, the park is home to an entire network of small restaurants sponsored by major companies. From the very beginning, Walt Disney built the park around partnerships with corporations, which made it possible to finance attractions without relying entirely on the studio's own budget. One of these restaurants is called Casa de Fritos, located in Frontierland, and it is operated by the Frito Company, the same company that makes ordinary Fritos corn chips. The menu there is simple: tacos, enchiladas, rice and beans, something like Tex-Mex cuisine for tourists who want to feel as though they're on the Mexican border without leaving California. Every dish comes with a free bag of Fritos. Nothing remarkable, just an ordinary food spot in an amusement park, one of dozens.
The restaurant workers do not even realize that they are standing at the very beginning of a product that will outlive the amusement park in its current form, and perhaps even themselves. The tortillas used for the dishes are supplied by Alex Foods, an outside contractor with no formal connection to Frito. And this is where the whole story begins, not with a brilliant idea, but with an ordinary kitchen routine. Every day, some of the tortillas remained unused, went stale, and were thrown into the trash at the end of the shift. Nobody saw this as a problem, just a cost of doing business that every restaurant faces. Something always spoils, something always gets thrown away, and no one thinks twice about it, because this kind of minor routine is repeated in exactly the same way in thousands of kitchens across the country every evening.
Until one day, a traveling salesman from Alex Foods, an ordinary sales representative who visited the restaurant on business, noticed a pile of discarded tortillas, and he asked the cook a simple question: why not cut them into triangles and fry them instead of throwing them away? There was no brilliant flash of inspiration in that moment, to be honest, just a man who made his living selling tortillas and instinctively disliked watching his product being thrown away for no reason. The irony is that this salesman, whose name remains unknown in most versions of the story, was in fact the real inventor of Doritos. His name simply was not preserved anywhere in particular, unlike the name of Arch West, which would later become part of the brand's official legend.
The cook gives it a try. The result is pretty good. Crispy chips, somewhat similar to traditional Mexican totopos. No special seasoning, except perhaps a little salt and cumin. The restaurant guests like them so much that the fried tortilla pieces gradually begin to replace the free bags of Fritos that used to be served with every order. Of course, there is still no formal menu item for this idea. The cook simply starts making them regularly because customers keep asking for them again and again. The problem is that no one at the Frito company itself knows anything about this. Formally, it is just an improvised kitchen experiment at a single restaurant in a single amusement park. No development department, no technical brief, no market launch strategy. Just a local snack known only to the people who stopped by to eat tacos at Disneyland, happened to try the strange fried triangles, and then told their friends about them.
This continues for several years, according to different sources, from sometime in the mid-1950s until the very beginning of the 1960s. No one at the company's headquarters even considers taking this kitchen invention beyond a single restaurant. It remains essentially a local park legend known only to regular visitors and the employees themselves, until 1960, when a new vice president of marketing joins the Frito company, a man named Arch West. A small detail from his biography that will later look like an irony of fate. Before Frito, he had worked as a cheese salesman and even earlier had managed an advertising campaign for Jell-O gelatin. An ordinary mid-level marketing career with nothing suggesting a future legend. 12 years later, it will be the taste of cheese, more precisely nacho cheese, that turns the modest Disneyland product into the company's biggest hit. But that moment is still far away, and West himself, of course, has no idea about it yet. In the summer of 1961, West is vacationing with his family in California, not far from San Diego. Along the way, he stops at a roadside stand, an ordinary eatery with no sign, where locally made fried corn chips are sold. He tries them and realizes this is exactly what his company's product line is missing. There is nothing complicated about this realization, just a man whose job requires him to think about snacks all day, finally trying a snack that genuinely seems interesting to him. West returns to the office with the idea and runs into a wall. Management reacts coolly, if not skeptically. At the time, the company is focused on already proven products. Lay's potato chips bring in steady revenue, and no one is particularly eager to spend resources on an unfamiliar corn snack with uncertain prospects. Besides, the company already has corn chips, those very Fritos, and some of the executives genuinely do not understand why they should invent something else in the same category, risking simply taking market share away from their own product. It is worth remembering that around this same time, West most likely also learns about the local improvisation at Casa de Fritos, the story of the fried tortilla scraps that had already been unofficially popular with park visitors for several years. The two stories, the roadside stand and the restaurant at Disneyland, merge into one idea. People clearly like the product. The only question is whether the company is willing to invest in it. West himself later recalled that he was convinced of the idea's potential practically from the first taste. All that remained was to convince everyone else.
West never receives official approval for development, at least not right away. Instead of giving up, he conducts his own marketing research, essentially proving to management with numbers what he had intuitively understood while on vacation. There is demand, and it is substantial. He has to literally push the idea over the heads of part of the leadership, relying on data rather than permission from above, a risky tactic for the career of any mid-level manager, but apparently the only one that worked in his case. It is worth remembering that if this kind of independent initiative had failed, it could easily have cost him not only his reputation, but also his position, and he still went ahead with it. That kind of stubbornness was unusual for the corporate hierarchy of the time. Normally, a mid-level marketer would simply back down after the very first rejection in order not to damage relations with management or risk a career over an idea whose success only he believed in. West did not. He was clearly one of those people for whom personal conviction mattered more than comfortable silence. And this is where the question arises that makes it worth watching to the end. If he had given up after the first no, would the brand that the whole world knows today have ever existed at all? In 1964, the product finally launches, at first on a limited basis in the regional California market. They come up with a simple name, Doritos, from the Spanish word doradito, little golden thing. Nothing elaborate, just an accurate description of what it essentially is, a golden-colored fried corn triangle. There is no complicated legend about the origin of the name, unlike the stories of other brands we have discussed before. Here, everything is fairly straightforward. And here's an interesting detail that people usually do not think about. The very first Doritos were practically flavorless. Just a toasted corn tortilla, a minimum amount of salt, and no special seasoning. By modern standards, that would probably seem boring. A viewer accustomed to powerful flavors today would hardly be impressed by ordinary, lightly salted corn crunch. But in the early 1960s, the category of tortilla chips simply did not exist on supermarket shelves, so even a simple, unseasoned product looked like something new. Nevertheless, the product performs well enough that in 1966, the company decides on a national launch, and Doritos becomes the first tortilla chip to be sold across the entire country rather than in a single region. Before that, this product category simply did not exist on the shelves of American supermarkets. There were potato chips, there were ordinary corn chips like Fritos, but no one had previously produced anything resembling a tortilla chip on an industrial scale. The company had to literally create a new product category from scratch, rather than simply compete in an existing one. In 1967, taco flavor is added, already a step forward, but still not the breakthrough that will turn the brand into a cultural phenomenon. Sales grow, but moderately. The company continues searching for a formula that will truly take off, experimenting with different seasoning variations in local markets before deciding on something bolder. No one in the development department at that time, apparently, yet suspects that the real breakthrough will come not from a complicated recipe, but from a flavor that seems almost obvious in hindsight.
The real explosion happens in 1972 when the company launches nacho flavor. That same orange powder that today is associated with Doritos more than anything else, and which, ironically, was ultimately created by a former cheese salesman. Sales soar so rapidly that nacho flavor quickly becomes not just one option in the lineup, but effectively the face of the entire brand. What began as an ordinary fried corn triangle with no particular character turns into a snack with one of the most recognizable flavors in the food industry of the 20th century. Fingers stained neon orange after eating a bag of chips will become a recognizable image in their own right for several generations of Americans, a kind of signature feature of the brand that people still joke about to this day, even leading to special napkins that the company would later begin including in some packages precisely because of this characteristic. By the mid-1960s, Frito had already merged with the potato chip manufacturer Lay's, forming Frito-Lay, and in 1965 it was acquired by PepsiCo, the same giant that would later give the brand the resources for truly large-scale expansion. This merger would prove important not only for Doritos. The scale of distribution the brand gained under PepsiCo was unavailable to any independent snack manufacturer of that era. In 1995, the product underwent a major redesign. The chips were made 20% larger, 15% thinner, the edges were rounded so the corners would not break off inside the bag during transportation, and the seasoning was made noticeably more intense. Essentially, this is the Doritos familiar to modern consumers, a version refined for maximum recognizability and maximum flavor.
Small technical details, such as the shape of a chip's corner, may seem insignificant, but it is precisely these details that ultimately create the difference between a product that simply exists on the shelf and a product that people can recognize by touch in the dark without even looking at the packaging.
What comes next is no longer the story of a product, but the story of a marketing machine. Doritos becomes a regular fixture during Super Bowl commercial breaks, and at one point, the company even hands over the creation of commercials to consumers themselves through a contest for amateur advertising videos, with the best entries airing during the biggest sporting event of the year in America. This is a fairly bold move for a major brand, entrusting part of its most expensive advertising campaign to ordinary people with no professional experience. But it was apparently precisely this unpredictability and human quality of the commercials that won over viewers for decades, turning the commercial break into an event of its own that was discussed almost as much as the game itself.
The brand enters into a partnership with Taco Bell, resulting in Doritos Locos Tacos, a taco in a shell made from a Doritos chip, which sells hundreds of millions of units in its very first year and becomes one of the most successful product launches in the history of the fast food chain as a whole, not just in the context of this particular collaboration. Essentially, two companies that grew out of completely different niches, tortilla chips and a Mexican fast food chain, found a way to literally merge into a single product, and consumers embraced the idea far more enthusiastically than anyone in the marketing departments of either company probably expected at the beginning. The number of flavors becomes so large that some of them today genuinely sound like the result of a random word generator, which, however, is also part of the marketing strategy. The stranger and more limited the flavor, the stronger the urge to try it before it disappears from the shelves. Limited releases are deliberately designed to create a sense of scarcity and urgency, a technique that works just as well in snack marketing as it does in selling sneakers through limited edition collections.
Despite all this success, the name of Arch West, the man who spent several years literally pushing the product idea through resistance from within his own company, is nowhere near as widely known today as the Doritos brand itself. Most people eating a bag of chips while watching a movie never even think about the fact that there was a specific person behind it, rather than simply the company came up with it. This is a fairly typical fate for the creators of many iconic products. The brand outgrows the individual person and begins to take on a life of its own, while the name of the person who once defended the idea in front of skeptical management gradually dissolves somewhere in the corporate archives.
West lived a long life and died in 2011 at the age of 97, almost half a century after he first tried similar chips at a roadside stand in California. He lived to see the regional launch, the national launch, the introduction of nacho flavor, which made the brand truly mainstream, and the transformation of Doritos into a global symbol recognizable even to people who had never been to the United States. Over the course of nearly 5 decades, he watched a product that he had once struggled to push through skeptical management become one of the best-selling snacks on the planet. And, judging by interviews with those close to him, he regarded it not with the pride of someone untouchable, but rather with the sincere, almost childlike delight of an ordinary person who had turned out to be right. And this is where the very detail that made us want to tell this story in the first place comes in.
At his request, which he had made while he was still alive, the family poured a bag of Doritos directly into the grave during the farewell ceremony before it was covered with earth. West's daughter later told journalists that this was exactly what her father had asked for, and that for the family it was not a sad gesture, but rather a tribute to his true legacy, a joke that was also completely serious. The result is a funny and at the same time touching image,
A man whose idea had once been met with nothing but rejection inside the company ultimately wanted to leave this world literally surrounded by his own creation. Not figuratively, but completely literally, and judging by the way his family talked about it, he himself treated the request with a considerable amount of irony, fully understanding how absurd it sounded from the outside. For the family, however, it became more of a reason to smile through the sadness of the funeral than a reason for awkwardness, a way to remember the man as he had been in life rather than only as the press and corporate press releases knew him.
Today, Doritos are sold in dozens of countries. The brand generates billions of dollars in revenue every year, and the product itself has long since stopped being just a snack. It is part of pop culture, a meme, a reason for limited edition collaborations, and an object of nostalgia for several generations in a row. People who have never been to Disneyland and know absolutely nothing about Casa de Fritos still instantly recognize that orange bag on a store shelf wherever they are, in Mexico City, Tokyo, or Moscow, regardless of whether they know a single word of Spanish or understand what the brand name itself means.
And if you trace the entire chain from beginning to end, a rather unexpected picture emerges. No one sat down with a blank sheet of paper and designed the product from scratch in a laboratory with a multi-million-dollar budget. It all began because one sales representative did not want to watch food being thrown into the trash. Then, one stubborn marketer refused to accept the first no as a final answer and conducted his own research despite the skepticism of his bosses. And then, the nacho seasoning, created by a former cheese salesman, completed the transformation and turned a modest regional product into one of the most recognizable snacks on the planet. The next time you open a bag of Doritos, remember you are holding a product that began as food that was supposed to be thrown into the trash at the end of an ordinary work shift in a small restaurant at an amusement park, and that apparently turned out to be so good that one man wanted to take it with him even to a place from which there is no return. Not a bad story for chips that many people eat without ever thinking that they have any history at all.